name is Carmina Larson. Welcome to my Translanguaging presentation. This is titled Translanguaging, How We Can Help Students on Their Journey to Solidify Their Identity as Bilingual Members of Society. We will begin by looking at the classroom of students you will see in the videos in this presentation. The videos were retrieved from the Roosevelt Dual Language Multimedia Library. Given the information of the video, we can assume this is a dual language classroom. It is third grade math. Students will be solving multi-step word problems and later using manipulatives to describe attributes of polygons. The language of instruction for this lesson is English. From what we see in the video, the classroom is made up of English language learners and native English speakers. In order to provide some context, we will look at the beginning of the lesson. Students will begin by doing an application problem. In the video, the teacher asks the student to read the problem aloud to the class. The student reads the problem in English. The teacher asks students to work out the problem with their groups. In this first video, we will see two instances of translanguaging.
Does this problem require? Back to your table. And how do you know? Tell them. How many steps? How do you know? Good. Why? How much? Because then you have to figure out how much is raised to get it, correct? Are we ready to share? Okay, you should be ready in 3, 2, 1.
Let's analyze what we just saw in the video. Math is a great subject to talk about translanguaging. When you have an application problem, you have to be able to read and comprehend what it is asking you to do. As students are dismissed by the teacher to work out the problem, you can hear one student talking to another student in Spanish, although the lesson is in English. She says, "Ay, no lo tienes que hacer ahorita." You don't have to do it right now, to the student sitting next to her. According to Baker and Wright, a person may turn to their native language to emphasize a point. This is called reinforcement. The student was telling her neighbor the instructions the teacher had stated. It seems she switched to Spanish to tell him what they were supposed to do to reinforce her point. This is important to note because it displays how bilingual students are pulling from both of their languages all of the time, regardless of the language of instruction. Let's analyze the second instance of translanguaging we see in this first video. In the second instance, we hear a student explaining to another student what the problem says. In Spanish, she says, "Mira, si tienes $437, which means, look, if you have $437, Hessen states, by using collaborative group work and multilingual partners, translanguaging extends and deepens the thinking of students. We can devise the student explaining the problem in Spanish to a peer is helping him or her construct a conceptual knowledge of the problem at hand. If her peer understands this type of problem requires 2 steps and understands how to solve it, then transferring this knowledge to English will be easier because they were able to use their first language to help them make sense of the problem. We can say these students tried to figure out the problem in English and now are using their native language to rephrase the problem to help them find the solution. For those unfamiliar with the Eureka Math program, it has many components in one lesson. In the beginning, we saw students working on an application problem. Often, the application problems are used to reinforce concepts students are working on all year long, such as solving multi-step problems, like we saw in the first problem. Following the application problem comes the concept development, which is where students will work on the objective of the lesson. In this classroom, the teacher has decided to use the problem set in the concept development to help students work through attributes of polygons. We see the teacher asking students to take out figures of shapes that they have in their desks. In this video, we will see the third and final translanguaging event. We will see the teacher speaking in Spanish with a student towards the end of the video.
How many? Look for all of them. They have 4 sides. You have to look through your shapes and put them on the side. They have to have 4 sides. Doesn't...
Wait, do they have to be equal?
They don't have to be equal. Does it say equal? No, it only says 4 sides. How many have 4 sides?
There's 9.
One part, keep your answer to yourself so you guys don't understand.
Cut this one wrong. That's why you got it.
Once you know the answer, keep your hand high up in the air so I know, so you know it. Ask me your question tomorrow one.
Figures have 4 sides. Oh yeah, all 12 have 4 sides. There's a letter.
Hey, you should be done.
Let's analyze this last translanguaging event. In this video, we see students working on the attributes of polygons as a class. The discussion we hear is in English. Some students ask the teacher for clarification, and they do so in English. Despite this being the language of instruction, we hear the teacher ask a student in Spanish how many of the shapes have 4 sides. He provides further clarification by saying they all have 4 sides. I thought this was interesting as I feel my experience in a dual language classroom would prohibit me from using a different language other than the one the lesson is being taught in. However, Heston states, Translanguaging provides a way of ensuring that emergent bilingual students receive the rigorous education that will allow them to meet Common Core standards, even when their English language is not fully developed. This teacher is showing the student he can access his entire language repertoire to understand the problem. Knowing what we know now about dual language and how second language acquisition works, I believe translanguaging can help ease the stress and anxiety some students experience with learning the content in their second language. By supporting content knowledge through the lens of their native language, we can show students how to transfer understandings from one language to the other. In essence, translanguaging is a strategy bilingual students can use to mediate understandings, construct meaning, include, exclude, and show knowledge. Let's look at some teaching and learning recommendations for the classroom. Translanguaging is an all-encompassing term for various ways of using languages to make meaning. It can look different based on the classroom, students, and subject matter. Some things that teachers can use in their classrooms are as follows. Parallel speech. This can be used to encourage students to participate in learning, even if their speaking proficiency in their second language is not at grade level yet. So if the teacher is speaking in English, students can answer in Spanish, and in that way they are still engaging in the content. Another one is collaborative work. Have students work together during content areas to promote understanding of concept despite language proficiency. Another thing teachers can do is bridging. Be direct about showing the connection of two languages. Move the focus away from using Spanish only during Spanish block, for example, and show students how to use their first language to help them become more proficient in their second one. Another thing teachers can do in the classroom is point out cognates. This can be used during bridging lessons. Connections between the two languages increases understanding of content and also helps facilitate learning of the second language. Here are some visual examples of the recommendations on the previous slides. On the left hand, we see a bridging lesson done in science. Notice the cognates the students learned about in a science lesson. We see student work that has been blown up on the right-hand side of that picture. On the picture on the right, we see students collaborating on an activity during science. These two students have different levels of proficiency in English and have been placed to work together on purpose so that they are able to help each other work through the content. Before presenting a lesson to a class, it's important to evaluate the cultural relevancy of that lesson to the students. In the application problem we saw at the beginning, the teacher could step back and think about how this word problem relates to the students. Have students participated in any fundraising in their school? What were they raising money for? Have students raised money at home? How did they accomplish this? We see some examples of different types of fundraising that can be done. Kermés, or having a lemonade stand. This is something that teachers should consider when presenting a problem. Can their students relate to it? Does it relate to their lives? Please see the following references to find more information about translanguaging. Thank you for watching my presentation on translanguaging.